this brings me to the core argument. We must recognize that these systems are interconnected, and our approach needs to reflect that complexity. And this brings me to
The world feels solid. It feels obvious. It feels as though it exists independently outside of us. We rarely question this feeling. It seems like common sense. It feels like reality itself. A table feels solid. A wall feels firm. The world feels already complete before we arrive. And we feel like someone inside this world, looking out at it, separate from what we see. But this feeling, as convincing as it is still a feeling. It is not a conclusion reached through careful examination. It is an assumption we begin with. Rupert Spira invites us to pause here, not to deny the world, not to reject experience, but to look more closely at how the world appears at all. What if the solidity of the world is not something the world possesses, but something that appears within experience itself? What if objects are not independent realities, but appearances, arising and dissolving within knowing? This exploration is called the transparency of objects. We are not moving toward a new belief. We are not adopting a new philosophy. We are simply allowing what feels solid to be seen clearly. And as this clarity deepens, something unexpected begins to happen. The world does not disappear, but it begins to lose its weight. The sense of a solid world. The world feels solid before we think about it. This sense of solidity does not come from reasoning. It comes from direct experience. We touch a table and feel resistance. We see a wall and assume firmness. From this, a silent conclusion forms. The world is made of solid things. Objects exist on their own. I am here, looking at them. This conclusion is rarely questioned, because it feels self-evident. But notice something important. This sense of solidity is a feeling, not a verified fact. Before we say, this object exists, there is already a sensation of reality. The world feels real before it is thought to be real. This means something subtle but crucial. Our certainty about the world does not begin with knowledge. It begins with feeling. Because of this feeling, we assume separation. The world feels out there. I feel in here. Objects appear distant. I appear to be the observer. This structure feels natural, but it is still a structure. At this stage, nothing has been denied. We are not saying the world is unreal. We are only noticing how reality is first felt. This feeling of solidity is the starting point. If we miss this, everything that follows becomes abstract. So we stay here for a moment with the simple fact that the world feels real. Objects as experience. What we call an object is never encountered on its own. In direct experience, we never meet a thing in itself. We meet color. We meet shape. We meet texture, sound, and distance. And all of these are known. This is subtle, but decisive. An object, as we experience it, is always an object as known. There is no experienced object outside knowing. This does not deny the object. It clarifies its status. The object is not an independent reality that later enters experience. The object appears as part of experience itself. When we look closely, the boundary between object and experience begins to soften. What we call an object is a pattern of sensations, held together by recognition. Memory contributes, interpretation contributes, expectation contributes. From this, the sense of a solid thing is formed. This is why the same object can feel different at different times. The object did not change. The experience did. This observation leads to the first clear meaning of transparency. An object is not a fixed substance with experience added to it. The object is experience, taking a particular form. Form appears clearly. but an independent core cannot be found. At this point, the world has not disappeared, but its assumed independence has begun to loosen. Form without substance. Objects clearly appear. They have shape, color, and function. Nothing in this observation denies the appearance of the world. The question is not whether objects appear, but what kind of reality they possess. When we look closely, we can describe the form of an object, but we cannot locate an independent substance within it. The shape can be seen. The color can be seen. The texture can be felt, but when we search for a solid core that exists by itself, nothing is found. This does not mean that the object is an illusion. It means that the object does not possess an independent substance separate from experience. The object appears, but its appearance is entirely dependent on experience. Form is present. Substance, as something fixed and self-existing, is absent. This is what is meant by the transparency of objects. An object is transparent, not because it disappears, but because it does not conceal a hidden core behind its appearance. When this is seen, the grip of objects begins to loosen. We still use objects. We still interact with the world. But the sense that objects carry an independent weight of reality begins to fade. At this point, the world has not vanished. What has vanished is the assumption that form must contain substance. This is a quiet shift, but a decisive one. How objects gain weight. Objects do not feel heavy by themselves. Their weight is not inside them. What we experience as heaviness comes from the way objects are met in experience. Emotion plays a central role here. When anxiety is present, objects appear threatening. When expectation is present, objects appear charged with pressure. When resistance is present, objects feel heavy and difficult. In each case, the object has not changed. What has changed is the emotional tone within which the object appears. Thought then joins emotion. Thought tells a story about the object. This might go wrong. This is a problem. I must control this. Through these stories, objects acquire meaning they do not possess on their own. Emotion gives the object weight. Thought gives it shape and direction. Together, emotion and thought solidify the world. But when emotion and thought are noticed as they arise, something changes. The emotion is felt without being resisted. The thought is seen without being followed. In this simple noticing, their grip begins to loosen. As their grip loosens, objects lose their added weight. The object remains. Its function remains. What falls away is the emotional and narrative burden placed upon it. At this stage, objects begin to appear more lightly, not because they are unreal, but because they are no longer carrying what was never theirs. This is another dimension of transparency. What remains when objects are transparent? Objects do not disappear. When they become transparent, the world remains. Forms remain. Functions remain. What disappears is not the object, but the belief that it carries an independent weight of reality. As this belief loosens, the world feels lighter. Not because anything has been added, but because something unnecessary has fallen away. When objects are seen clearly, they no longer conceal what they never contained. At this point, attention naturally turns not toward the objects, but toward that in which objects appear. Sensations appear, thoughts appear, feelings appear, and all of them are quietly known. That knowing does not come and go. With experience, it does not change. When objects change, It does not intensify when emotions intensify. It simply remains. This knowing is not something new to be achieved. It has been present through every experience. When objects become transparent, this knowing stands revealed, not as a concept, but as a simple fact. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be concluded. The world continues. Life continues, but they are no longer carried as a burden. What remains is clarity, and within that clarity, the simple knowing that has always been here. Let us continue this exploration together with truth inquiry and expand the horizon of consciousness. Your subscriptions and likes are a genuine source of support and encouragement. Thank you